the March 9th, 2023 Newmarket Conservation Commission meeting. We'll get underway at 7 p.m. and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, Sue, if you could do roll call. Here.
Here. Here.
Excellent. And we're missing Melissa, who couldn't make it tonight, and Chris said she'd be a few minutes late. And Nicole and Mike from the council is not here. All right, we are going to,
Yeah, that's right.
we have a guest speaker tonight. And just going to take a second because I just need to open up my laptop. But let me introduce you and then we'll get underway. So Dr. Bob Jones from the UNH Department of Natural Resources and the Environment and Research Associate Professor there. And he's going to talk about tracking sources of fecal contamination in the Lamprey River watershed from 2021 to 2023. Sounds super exciting.
23 to come. We haven't done it.
If you're going to move about, you just have to carry that, or you can stand here. You have
I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually put it on a PDF, so some people don't have Macs. I could have given you a copy.
That's all right. It should be good to go.
I just use the I don't think
Yeah. You can do either one. Let's see.
this will work. Yeah. So I think I can do
Okay.
this.
Let's go back. This was there like 5 minutes ago.
There it is.
All right. I think you're good. Hold on a second. Just want to make sure that you're not on automatic. It's possible you're on automatic, but I'll let you.
All right. Thanks, Ellen. So, hi everyone. As Ellen said, I'm at UNH. I've been there for a long time. I live in Durham, and we've been hired by the Lamprey River Advisory Committee with their funding through U.S. Fish and Wildlife to go into the Lamprey River watershed the last 2 years and explore. Well, I'll go over what we're trying to do, but we're looking at fecal contamination, bacterial contamination in the Lamprey River watershed. This is my second talk today. I was down in New Bedford, Massachusetts, giving a talk at around 11 today, so I've been bouncing around a bit, but the heck, it's fun. Any time you have any questions, let me know. The thing, I'm a microbiologist, a bacteriologist, and they're not something that people grasp very easily. You can't see them, so we know what happens when we get sick. So that's the issue here, is that there's a public health threat. So if you have fecal contamination in water, that means the water may contain microorganisms that can cause disease or pathogens. These can be viruses, bacteria, protozoa, etc. So what we're working with in the Lamprey River is recreational surface water areas. So people use it for boating and for swimming. And so they're not harvesting shellfish. They're not doing other things. They're not. It is used as drinking water in some. Does Newmarket use it for drinking water? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, but some of it gets shipped over to Durham, right? It's put in Spruce Bog, and then yeah. So anyway, but mainly we're talking about recreational surface water area or uses. So, and so what we're looking at are bacteria that indicate the presence of fecal contamination. So if they're present at high enough concentrations and they exceed state standards, then that's a problem. So I'll get to that in just a second. But anyway, So just some pathogenic kinds of bacteria that you may know about, like bacteria. You've heard of Salmonella, E. coli, Shigella. These are bacterial species and genuses that can cause disease if the right types are there. Viruses, they include norovirus, adenovirus, coronavirus, all kinds of viruses. And protozoa can be also shed by feces. Giardia, giardiasis is caused by a Giardia lamblia, and cryptosporidium is another protozoan disease you can get from fecal contamination. So fecal contamination is a public health issue. So for this study, what we're trying to do is to initiate monitoring at several key sites in the watershed to provide essential data for assessing water quality, public health risks, and sources of contamination. That's really the three main goals. And what we want to do is expand the baseline of information. As you'll see, there's not much information available from the state in recent years in terms of they used to do a lot more sampling and monitoring and analyzing water samples for all kinds of things, and they're doing less of that. So there's not a lot that when we started this, there wasn't a lot of bacterial data available.
Was that DES, Steve?
Yes. Yeah. So their surface water division or whatever it is, they have several different programs that cover that. What? Drinking water would be more, they tend to look at water, the area around the drinking water source or around the wells and stuff. So that's a different one. This would be surface water, yeah. We also want to target rainfall events because rainfall is one mechanism by which fecal contamination can get washed into surface water. So it's a type of source. It's not the sources we're going to be looking at, but it's a type of source. We want to look at what we've compiled data from ongoing and past bacterial monitoring in the Great Bay watershed. So there's been a long-term site at the docks in downtown Newmarket. The Great Bay Estuarine Research Reserve really manages that. We started that back in like 1989 or something like that. It's been ongoing since. We've been doing bacterial contamination monitoring there ever since then. And we want to assess the potential for eliminating or mitigating pollution sources identified by this study. And we want to extend findings. We also wanted to extend findings to interested groups such as you guys, to see what you think. So, how is water quality monitored? So, states like New Hampshire and Maine use fecal indicator bacteria. You probably heard of total coliforms, fecal coliforms, Enterococci, E. coli. These are all indicator bacteria. So they are present, if they're present in water, then they indicate the presence of fecal contamination. The ovals on the right just show that total coliforms is one indicator, and it includes a whole bunch of bacteria that meet that definition. Fecal coliforms are a little bit more precise. There's still a lot of different microbacteria that can fit that description, but it's not as wide-ranging as total coliforms, so it's a little bit more exacting. E. coli is really the species that they're shooting for. E. coli is a species of bacteria that can get into water and potentially cause disease, although we each have billions of E. coli in our guts right now, our microbiome, and we're healthy. If you get the wrong one, like E. coli 015787, that was the one in Jack in the Box hamburgers, that can kill kids and really cause diseases. So if you have the wrong strain of E. coli, that's the key. So what we do is we use these indicators to let us know that a pathogen may be present or not. It doesn't mean if you find E. coli or fecal coliforms that there are pathogens. It's an indicator, okay? Enterococci is up there in the gray box. That's what we use in marine recreational waters. So The states use E. coli for freshwater recreational waters, enterococci for marine recreational waters, and fecal coliforms for shellfish-growing waters. So anyway, we collect and culture these from we collect water samples, and we culture these bacteria on little petri dishes at using different media, using different indicator, coloring, and at different temperatures, and we're able to count the numbers of these by standard methods. The concentrations are determined, and then we take that concentration and compare it to what the state standards are. States, and I'll show you that in just a second, for different water quality management issues. These organisms are used because they're highly abundant in animal feces. They're capable of surviving in the environment for a limited time. They're not going to disappear immediately, but they're not going to stick around forever, although that's not always true. And they're cheap and easy to run analysis for. You started to go after every kind of pathogen that was in there, viruses especially, it would be much more expensive. So these are indicators of fecal contamination. These are the state of New Hampshire standards. So fecal coliforms is used for approved shellfish harvesting. 14 CFUs, that's colony-forming units. So you take a water sample and you count how many colonies of bacteria grow that look like fecal coliforms on your media. And E. coli, again, it's 158 counts per 100 mils. Enterococci is 104 counts per mil. So it's not many. And these thresholds have been set through a lot of EPA-funded research to show that above those levels, there's an unacceptable risk for human illness indicated by that level of contamination, okay? So it's a lot of mechanics here to begin with, but I just want to make sure we're on the same page. So we're looking at all three of those indicators because downstream of the Lamprey River you have recreational shellfishing and you have commercial shellfishing. So it is a concern in the estuary. But mainly we're looking for E. coli up in the freshwater areas and enterococci to indicate what might be going on in the marine area around Newmarket. Okay. So again, they're present in all animal feces in high numbers. They've been used for decades as standards to manage water quality and uses. But in red at the bottom, their presence does not help to differentiate animal from human sources. So just because you're testing for enterococci or fecal coliforms, whatever, that doesn't tell you anything about where that came from. So getting at where these things came from, aside from doing an exhaustive sanitary survey where you walk the length of the Lamprey River and you look for any evidence of contamination. You take samples, you take a lot of samples. This is what the shellfish program does in every shellfish growing area. They have to go on and look for contamination. If they're lucky, they find what was causing contamination. If they're really lucky, they fix it and the problem goes away. But what we're finding is a lot of these sources are really diffuse. They're hard to really understand where they're coming from. And so I'll talk about this method that we use, this microbial source tracking method, in a second. And that's what we use to get at what the sources are. So this is just an area, this is just showing you that, like, for how they classify, how waters can be classified. You can see in red in the Great Bay Estuary, those are areas that are closed, that you're not supposed to take any shellfish out of at any time, mainly because sewage treatment plants empty in Newfields and Newmarket and upstream in Exeter at the mouth of the Swampscott and the Lamprey River. Little Bay is an open area for commercial shellfishing. You can see all the latest map of the farms in the Little Bay area. So that's one concern, as I said, but that's less of a concern up in the Lamprey River watershed, obviously. But what comes down the Lamprey, again, can contribute to managing this resource and this commercial activity. So as I said, stormwater can be a really significant source of bacteria to the estuary. We did a 3-year study where we looked at, see the 9EXT, that's a site that is above the dam in Exeter. The next one, GB80, is below the dam in the Squamscott River. So we see the red is during a storm event or soon after an event. So it shows the impact of a storm event, of storm events over a 3-year time period on bacteria. And you can see it goes up to 300 at 9EXT. Meanwhile, during dry weather, it's down around 40. So you can see there's a lot of big increases from stormwater. So stormwater causes runoff, and runoff can carry sources of fecal contamination. Where that's coming from, what it is, this still doesn't tell you, but stormwater is something that there's a lot of resources going into managing that. So that's one source of bacteria to the estuary and to the Lamprey River watershed, for that matter. So, and for example, this is the Hampton Seabrook estuary. This is a map from, I don't know, quite a while ago, probably 20 years ago, but those little red dots are little stormwater conduits. So there's one little estuary, and those are all the little stormwater conduits that can dump stormwater into the estuary. So it's just a graphic to show how significant stormwater can be to a surface body of surface water. Okay, so how do we get at what the sources are? And this was really driven by EPA's decision to really start enforcing laws and try to clean up impaired water. So any waters that were impaired, in this case by fecal pollution, they said you have to come up with a plan to get rid of that impairment. And people are saying, well, how are we going to do that? We don't know where these fecal contaminants are coming from. So this microbial source tracking describes a suite of methods that have been developed over the last 30 years or so, 25 years, for determining fecal pollution sources in environmental waters. And it's used to better classify and allocate the contributions of fecal contamination. So if you really know in a water body if the contamination is coming from birds, if it's coming from humans, if it's coming from cows, dogs, whatever it is, then you can say, okay, now we know we can deal with human contamination. We can deal with dogs. We can deal with cows. Birds are a little difficult. There are ways, but, and anyway, so this tells you how to sort of, when you look at all the contamination sources that are in an area, you can understand better how to allocate sources and really get at eliminating sources and bringing your water out of impairment. And this is a lot of this is our method. We use a molecular method that's based on PCR, which is called polymerase chain reaction. What it does is it's a process that repeatedly amplifies a piece of DNA that we're interested in. I won't go into the details, but if that piece of DNA is in there, if that piece of DNA from a bird contaminating bacteria is in the water sample, this PCR will amplify that, will double it, quadruple it, will logarithmically increase the numbers of that piece of DNA in a 3-hour time period to like 1 million or 2 million times as much as it was there at the beginning. And now you can actually visualize that DNA. And you can say that that bird was there causing contamination. So it's a molecular method. And just the other thing, this Bacteroides species, I don't know if you guys get into human microbiomes at all, but Bacteroides are really prevalent in human gut microbiomes. They're anaerobes. They don't like oxygen. They're obligate. They don't like oxygen at all. So a lot of these target genes that we're looking for, so what we target sources include general fecal contamination, animal contamination, which we call mammal. It does include birds. We look at humans, ruminant, dog, gulls, bird birds in general, Canada geese, cows, and horses. And there's a number of reasons why we've chosen these, because there are target genes that are specific that we can amplify that tell us if each one of those is in a water sample. And for the Lamprey River, we're targeting all of those in our work, in our toolbox. We can either find the presence or absence of them. We can do this using PCR. We can use qPCR, which is quantitative, which is semi-quantitative. And you'll see we do that for humans, and that's an important thing to do. But anyway, a lot of these the genes that are specific for dogs, a gene for bird, a gene for Canada goose, that comes from these Bacteroides species, which are obligate anaerobes. The nice thing about that is they don't hang around in the environment very long. They don't like water with oxygen in it, so they tend to die off pretty quickly. So this is not something, it gets around one of the problems with E. coli. E. coli can actually grow in the environment. It's not supposed to, but it does. So it makes trying to look at E. coli concentrations kind of complicated. But anyway, I don't go into any more detail, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to get into that in more detail. This isn't the best map. The reason I wanted to use it is this is a DES map, Surface Water Quality Assessment Viewer. You can go to this website and you can look at all the different colors of all the little surface waters that are designated here are labeled and they're numbered, and you can look up what's known for every one of those little water bodies. So but we do have site 1 is Moonlight Brook, the mouth, right at the, right down in the estuary, the tidal waters. Site 2 is the Piscasset Park Boat Launch. Site 3 is Wiswall Dam. Site 4 is the Wadley Falls Lee Canoe Access. Site 5 is behind the Epping Town Hall. Site 6 is Carroll Beach in Raymond, behind the Lamprey River Elementary School. We added the last 2 this year, and I'm really going to go over this past year because it's more comprehensive. We have 6 sites instead of 4. 2 years ago, in 2021, we included the dock at downtown Newmarket, but that was being done by the Great Bay Estuarine Research Reserve anyway, so we didn't repeat it this year because we have data from there anyway. So those are the sites, and these were suggested through interacting with the Lamprey River Advisory Committee. All right, so let's see what we're finding. So, a lot of data. We went out 8 different times. We tried to do it monthly, but we ran into some supply chain problems and other things. But we went out 8 different times between May 22nd and November 28th. And so we have 3 different columns with the dates, the sites, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right there, for each date. And we have enterococcus, E. coli, and fecal coliforms. And yellow means the concentration of the seed state standards. The fecal coliforms up in the freshwater area doesn't mean much. It's just an indicator that's not used by the state to look at fecal contamination of surface waters. Up in the river, up in the freshwater portion of the watershed, it's E. coli that we're looking at. So you can see there were 1, 2, 3, 4 different sites that had E. coli concentrations that exceeded the state standard on May 22nd. You can see in the middle of the summer, this was a very dry summer, as you know, not a lot of runoff. And so we didn't see much contamination, but what you do see is that site number 1, Moonlight Brook, exceeds the state standard, as my note A says, in 2021. Moonlight Brook again, 2022 actually. Moonlight Brook again had consistently elevated levels, including E. coli on 7 of 8 days. So only in, looks like August 2nd did it have a low level. So that's our most consistently contaminated site. Aside from Site 1, after June 2nd, only Sites 2 and 3 had E. coli concentrations that exceeded the state standard in only one time. So early on in the season, we saw a little bit more contamination based on E. coli. And later in the summer, and through November, we really didn't see much except at Moonlight Brook. So significant rainfall events were really infrequent. And boy, I don't know if you guys, Durham is terrible. They'll say we're going to get a big storm and it goes around us, everywhere but Durham. It's probably the same thing for Newmarket, but I don't know what it is, but we really couldn't catch a storm. It's a challenge. I've got to get students out there to help do this. So we really didn't capture only on November 28th, which was a storm event. So we're really going to try to get at that next year, and hopefully we do have a non-drought summer. So these are the fecal indicator bacteria. So it gives you an idea as to the frequency of exceedances of state standards. Pretty rare once you get past early June, except at Moonlight Brook. So how high and where you see exceedances. So this is just a graph showing you Moonlight Brook and then Scasset River Park, Wiswall, Wadley, Epping, and then Raymond. And you can see the concentrations, the average concentrations across all months are pretty low except at Moonlight Brook for enterococci, E. coli, and fecal coliforms. So that's a summary graph of what we found. Now what I'll get into, this is a lot of information, but I like looking at patterns. So you can see the dates go from May 25th on the left to November 28th on the right. So the time is going from left to right. Within each one from each date, you can see we have site 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got the ND for Moonlight Brook, ND for Wiswall Dam, etc. You can see with time what's going on. So mammal, as I said, really what we use this marker for is to see if there's any fecal contamination there. It also tells us that the assay is working. So we don't have any stuff in the water that would interfere with this molecular method. So we use that kind of as a control. So we always saw mammal. And that's what we see everywhere we do this. We've done this from Martha's Vineyard up beyond Acadia and Maine, up to Vermont. We've done this all over New England. So we use this. We don't get much information from the mammal assay, but we do know that it works. That we should be able to see other sources of the The human contamination, if you look at that, so the yellow crosses are positives, the white is negative. So where you see a yellow positive, we detected human, and so you can see there's a Moonlight Brook. We detected human in May 25th, June 2nd, June 22nd, and then August 2nd, October 24th, October 31st, and November 28th. So again, very high frequency of detecting human contamination at Moonlight Brook. We also see at Wadley Falls on May 25th, and then Epping Town Hall on July 21st, and then we have Wiswall Dam on October 24th, and Scasset River Boat Launch on November 28th. So, and actually Raymond, our winter school, pond there on so all the other sites had one incidence of detection of human contamination. The reason I'm emphasizing human is if our fecal material is in a water sample, we carry pathogens that cause us to get diseases. Birds can. They carry microorganisms that could cause diseases in between them. If one's sick, it'll cause a bird to get sick. It won't necessarily make us get sick. They do include some microorganisms that can cause us to get sick too. So there is a concern, but it's much more concerning to find human contamination in surface water because that's a direct link to us in terms of potential disease. I'm going to go right up to that. I can't really quite see these red. Okay, so as I said, we can semi-quantitatively determine human contamination if we use this qPCR method. And what you see is Moonlight Brook, where we did detect human contamination, only in Moonlight Brook and one time at Wiswall Dam are they in red. And these are really high levels of, yeah, should I use this? Okay, yeah, okay, thank you. Oh, okay, sorry. Let's see. There we go. All right. Yes, so as you can see, there's these numbers that are highlighted in red, and under human, every one of them except Moonlight Brook on August 2nd, and Wiswall Dam, and Scasset River Boat Launch, and Raymond Elementary School are yellow. Moonlight Brook, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dates out of 8 exceeded this level of 4,200 per 100 mils. This is a study done by EPA to try to understand, okay, we see human contamination there, but what's too much? It's kind of like setting that 158 E. coli is the state standard for freshwater recreational waters. Above that, there's an unacceptable level of risk. They figured out that if you do this microbial source tracking, we're using the same method as EPA and USGS uses. If you get above 4,200 for human, that's above the acceptable level of human illness. So that's an indicator that they've developed using this method. So I just wanted to point that out. You can also see that we can quantify bird, and I highlighted the highest one, 7,700. There's no standard. There's no threshold level set for birds, but you can see the relative amount, so we can quantify and get a feel for whether or not there's a lot of bird contamination or whether there's less bird contamination. So we get a feel for how much bird contamination is present by using this quantitative method. All right. So here's our findings. The human contamination level exceeded the threshold for unacceptable levels on 6 of 8 sample dates and once at Wiswall Dam. And that was the only time Wiswall Dam had human contamination. At Site 1, which is Moonlight Brook, identification of the source of the consistent human contamination could benefit from further investigation. And as I'll show you in a second, in 2023, we're going to try to look into that a little bit more. And any ideas you all have would be welcome to hear. Other sites showed consistent detection of E. coli. Oh, let me just go back here for a second. The other thing, I didn't even talk about dogs and cows and birds. So yeah, sorry about that. What we do see is early in the season, we see a little bit of dog contamination. Birds kind of sporadic, although less sporadic. Cows kind of sporadic. And then as you get on and further into the season, we can see dogs starting in June 12th was detected in almost every site on every date from there on through November. And you can also see birds were detected in every site on every date, July 12th onward. Cows remain here and there. Ruminants, which can include deer, there's a difference in sensitivity between the ruminant marker and the cow, so they should line up, but they don't always. But anyway, you can see we saw some ruminants, we saw some Canada geese, we saw a horse in November. I'm not sure where that's coming from, and cows. And so cows could be manure, and so there's a. I don't really know the watershed that well. I'm trying to learn more about it, but this is what we found with all the other types of sources. We did see a little bit of gull contamination, and yeah, I think I've covered all of them there. But it's interesting to see that what we saw with Moonlight Brook in particular was we saw fewer different types. If you look at Moonlight Brook, and on May 25th, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of contaminant sources found. If you look over on October 24th, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different types. So that was the site that had the most diverse types of sources showing up at the bottom where it empties into the Lamprey River itself. And the others showed varying levels of diversity. So anyway, back to the findings. So other sites did show consistent detection of E. coli concentrations that exceeded the state standard at Site 1. So consistent detection that exceeded the state standard at Site 1 and infrequently at 4 of the other 5 sites, and never at Site 6. So we didn't see any exceedance of the E. coli standard at Site 6. Various sources contributed, especially birds, dogs, cows. Site 1 had the most diverse sources, and sources became more diverse after July across all sites. One rainfall event was captured in November that raised concerns about runoff as potentially a significant source of contamination. So we want to follow up and get more rainfall events. So we've been discussing this with LRAC. We're communicating the findings. We've been asked to provide the data to the DES because they're putting together their 2-year report of water quality in the state. That's where they use everything they can find as sources of information to inform them putting together a comprehensive view of water quality. And I'm going to present the findings of this at a meeting, a national shellfish meeting in a couple weeks, and other places potentially as well. We've been doing this type of work all over New England for quite a while, so we have quite a bit of information built up. I'd like to acknowledge all the people that were involved with this, a lot of students in particular, Lamprey River Advisory Committee for support. And we will be doing more work in the watershed in 2023. Again, trying to look at rainfall events, try to figure out where the human contamination may be coming from in Moonlight Brook, and just getting into Moonlight Brook in a little bit more detail. The table up at the top are the sites in the state database that are located as close to the different sites as I could find. You can see the last sample for some of these was in 2008, 2007, and the classification categories like 3 and D means we don't have enough data, and some of the other ones mean we don't have enough data. So that just shows you that we really don't know a lot about the water quality in the Lamprey River watershed. So that's all I wanted to talk about tonight. I know it's a ton of information.
So do you actually have funding to look at Moonlight Brook in more depth, or you're looking to?
Yes, we'll use the resources to to support getting into Moonlight Brook a little bit more. And I've never really, I know it disappears under downtown. I know where it comes out, but I really haven't explored it upstream, so I'm not really sure how to approach that. But people have any ideas? I have let Sean know at the Public Works that last year I said we're looking at Moonlight Brook and we're finding human contamination, so he knows that. I didn't tell him this year, but I told him last year about this finding. So
Do you think it will just be water quality sampling or actually walking to look for sources? Or?
we can do that. Yeah, we do see birds in the water. We tend to go at low tide because we want to see the influence of the water coming downstream. We don't want to see it mixed with tidal water, which is cleaner. We want to see the worst case scenario. So we always go at low tide. There's a lot of birds that hang out there. So we see birds there. But it'd be interesting to go up further into the watershed, take some samples, and try to see what we see. We can bracket the human contamination and find that it's probably in the infrastructure when it's not daylighted, then we know it's there. So if we don't see any human contamination upstream, then we'll be able to make that call.
Any, yeah?
I believe there's a sewer pump station adjacent to Moonlight Brook there, that brick building.
Right there at where it outlets?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's and I believe somewhere in the vicinity of the walkway over the culverts, there's a sewer line that runs under Moonlight Brook.
Mm.
It goes over to that. I'm curious if you'd find at the same levels, not too far upstream,
Yeah.
like right where it comes out from underneath in between all the houses down there.
Yeah, so get a little bit further up towards where it actually daylights.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
We haven't really done that too much. We could look at that. Is the pipe, is the conduit go right underneath? I mean,
It parallels the river,
Oh,
if
it
I
does.
remember right.
I think it's actually in the earth section on between the two pieces of Shandon Park.
Yeah.
So right at the outfall, there's a sewer main.
Yeah, right under the three culverts, right?
Yeah,
I
it's
think
like right there.
oh, okay. I see, yeah.
So if you're downstream of the three culverts, two or three,
Three.
you know, on the riverside of that little walkway
Yeah.
that crosses, you
Okay.
might be
That's
downstream.
Zero.
Yeah.
Could be.
I mean, the brook runs back up, behind the high school, behind the elementary, kind of into the neighborhood where I am. So, like, it kind of moves out into residential pretty quick. But right by the mouth of the river, yeah, both the end of Creighton Street is kind of septic receiving right now, and then there is the sewer main right by the outfall. So.
Where does it go underneath the ground? I mean, is there a place that we could sample just before it goes? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, at
Right,
the end,
right on the other side of the railroad tracks.
yeah.
I think, and I think there's a gap too, like where the gas station is, Sinclair, yeah, the dinosaur. I think you can kind of see an arch underneath the railroad tracks, just the very top edge of it,
Oh,
kind of behind that.
we want to go somewhere where it's safe to take a sample and where we could.
Hersey Lane, it's like in the woods, right?
Yeah,
over in that area.
I mean, there's a small walking trail between kind of my neighborhood and the back of the elementary school,
Okay.
which is up near where it starts. That's
Uh-huh.
very easy to access. There's a ton of trails back there,
Okay.
so that's all accessible. It's literally right in the back parking lot of the high school. It's pretty much just past the property of the elementary school, so I think there are access points if you're looking for them.
We learned in Raymond that we have to go in and get permission to hang around the school. School hours.
Is that neighborhood, Sam? Is it on town sewer, or is that septic? That's town sewer.
Yeah.
And is the whole do you know if the whole Durrell area is town? Can't recall.
Most of Durrell and those roads are up Hersey somewhat. There is I can draw you a map or something, but off my little neighborhood behind the elementary, there is also sewer line that goes through the woods there. There's actually manhole covers in the middle of the woods as it
That's
cuts
freaky.
through out to 152, out to South Main Street.
Okay.
So there are sewer mains back there as well.
Yeah.
'Cause there's not much I was thinking of private septic, and I think the only ones might be above the dirt section of Percy Lane.
Yeah, further up.
Because then you run right into the Piscassic, and it's kind of the watershed break-ish.
Yeah.
Shallow break.
Yeah, we found sewer pipes, cement-covered sewer pipes can be leaky. They tend to infiltrate the stormwater, especially when you exfiltrate the IO.
Especially when they're below the level of the ground, potentially below the level of the groundwater there with the river. They're lower than far lower than the high tide level. And I know that when the whole back behind the mills flooded during the bigger floods, they were just manhole covers, an open sewer. So if they are a flood situation, they may fill.
So what more would be helpful to help with your sampling? You're going to do it this year?
Yeah, we're going to do it again this year.
But further up Moonlight Brook, or that's pending?
We'll do something up Moonlight Brook. I mean, again, I'm looking for information on that. So if anyone wants to write to me and give me more information, that'd be great.
Would you be able to do that, Sam?
Yeah, I can give you my contact. I mean, literally,
Okay,
park
so,
at my house type deal.
all right, that'd be great.
But yeah, I mean, I walk back there a lot, so I can show you around.
Just we're sensitive to getting people's permission.
Yeah, we can help. I mean, we could help with that if that would be helpful. And do you need more funding from LRAC, or you're set with funding to do this additional sampling? Or
We'll be able to, they are funding us to the extent that we're going to kind of repeat what we did last year, only take more of the resources, some of the resources, and get into Moonlight Brook a little bit more. And also try to capture some elements.
yeah, I mean, I think sort of bigger picture, which you may be aware of, but we do want to fix those culverts. I think long term, open it up and have a freer flowing water from Moonlight Brook.
Oh, okay.
And also maybe living shoreline along
Yeah.
Shanna Park. So we have these big projects, but everybody wants to fix or understand Moonlight Brook before you invest all that money in doing infrastructure improvements.
Right.
So let's figure out the water quality issue first,
Oh, yeah. I see.
and then maybe do those. Then we can do those other pieces
Yeah.
after that.
So I'll definitely get in contact with you guys.
That'd be great.
When we start to get up and running, so I can recruit some students.
Yeah.
Really?
And I would say the literal outfall for the sewer
that?
treatment, the literal outfall for the sewer treatment facility is just a few hundred yards
Yeah.
from there.
Right.
So I
They're
don't
doing
know
a
if
pretty
that
good
gets
job. Yeah,
into
we're
the sewer.
seeing a lot of evidence.
Yeah, and we can talk to Sean and see if there's any infrastructure mapping. It would be good for you to know exactly where some of the sewer septic infrastructure is, Sam, if that would be, you think you could talk to Sean about that?
Can I ask him?
Yeah.
I think Bill McDowell's group is looking at nitrogen in that area. I talked to Michelle, who's someone who worked for them, and they've gone up Moonlight and looked at nitrogen.
Hmm.
So we know something about the access and a couple of times. I'll find out.
Mhm.
There's fecal contamination contains a lot of nitrogen, so there's a relationship there.
Yeah, the cows is interesting because as far as I know, there's no cows in Moonlight Brook. Does anybody know about cows in Moonlight Brook watershed? Yeah.
We get weird results. I can give you all kinds of weird stories. So,
But it could be manure. People brought compost or manure onto a
yeah.
property.
Yeah.
Great.
Ellen, I had a quick question.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And I'm sorry I missed the first couple of sentences.
Yeah.
So in like 2 sentences, can you tell me who is lumped together under the mammal category?
Okay.
That's the first question. And then the second one was not to pin a bad name on birds, but here's birds, gull, Canada geese. Who is in the bird group?
So, okay, I'll ask you the second one first. Birds include, it's pretty much a universal bird market. The people that did this were out in Oregon, and they looked at all kinds of bacterial call mammal is really, it's just a general, the only time we haven't found it is in the ocean. We've done a lot of beach water quality, and when we're there in a really clean time, and there hasn't been any runoff and stuff. Maybe we don't see the mammal marker. So it's kind of we use it, it doesn't tell a lot. It tells us that there's something there, there's genetic material that comes from, it's actually not just mammals, it's birds too. But we use it because it tells us that the assay is working and that we should be able to detect it. Because you can get stuff in natural waters that interferes with this molecular biology stuff, and it won't work with inhibitors in it. So this is like an indicator that the inhibitors are. That's what we use.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, that was very interesting,
No, yeah,
Steve.
it's
Thank
very
you for
good.
that. Really
Yeah.
great
Thank you,
stuff.
thank you.
And,
The
We have our
opportunity.
own private seminar here. This is
yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's on
Official
TV.
groups. All right, great.
Yeah,
If
thank
you have
you.
any questions, let me know. I'm happy. I'm just in Durham and at UNH.
That's what I meant. Newmarket's had this private seminar, not like us.
No,
know
I
we're
know,
on
I
TV.
know.
I
Sorry,
don't
I'll-
want to exclude.
Yep.
all
Thank you,
people
Mike.
for watching.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Sam, there's a dam up there right by the high school too, right? The stream. I think I poked around in there a little bit.
Yeah,
By the
there
ball
is.
fields there.
Yeah,
back
right
there.
behind the elementary. There's like a very short drop.
Right.
It's a little concrete spillway.
Yeah. I don't know how far that used to back up, or if it all filled in and now it just spills over the top of it.
Yeah, don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is a little structure there.
Is that part of the old little ice pond, or is that separate?
Yeah, that's right by the little pond feature.
Great. We'll catch up with you and we can, whatever you need help with.
Yeah.
Maybe Bart can help us make a map or something. That'd be great. Awesome. That was very interesting. I think I skipped over public comment, but there's no public unless Tim wants to. Hello. So, all right, we'll move on to acceptance of minutes from February 9th, 2023. Any edits, changes? They look fine to me. Have a motion to accept the minutes as written?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Second?
I'll second it.
All right, Colin. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions?
I'll abstain since I wasn't here.
Chris and Juliana?
Do we have a quorum?
Yeah, we have a quorum, and let's see, I can't remember who I've appointed, so Colin, I'm gonna appoint you as a voting member tonight.
Okay.
Because Melissa's not here, and then next month, you'll get that. So you don't vote, but you get to vote on the minutes, so. Does that work?
Okay.
You can be appointed, though, because there's more than one missing member.
Town council rep can be,
Melissa?
He didn't vote.
oh, David's not here. Yeah, so, sorry, you can also be a voting member tonight, so sorry.
Okay.
We both
I mean,
need-
whatever you need. I just wanted to. I just wasn't.
The
voting.
minutes. Sorry. I was missing David. Thank you. All right, moving along. Finance report, I sent that earlier this week. So our conservation fund balance is $126,453.30. The Shanda fund is the same at $4,764.46. So add those two together, and we have $131,217.76. And the only thing, we had some interest coming in, and I don't think we had any expenditures last month. You will have seen, it's going to show up actually in next month's balance, but every year we get some money from LCHIP. LCHIP gives money to towns or other entities that actually monitor easements that LCHIP holds. It's a little funky, but they give us money, so we got this year $600 for doing Piscassic River Lizelle and the Smith Sisters, and now we do the Piscassic Ringo and Gaziano. So I think it's for those three properties, but it's usually a fixed amount of money. So anyways, that's nice, but that will show up next month. Any questions about that account? And then the balance in the general fund is $1,769.97. And just one other financial thing. So you may recall we submitted a budget last August for the general fund for the new budget coming up, and we vote next week on the budget. So in that budget, we currently get $4,185 from the general fund. So if the budget goes through next week, that will bump up to $4,520 beginning July 1st. So that will help cover the salaries go up a little bit. Our contract with CELT goes up a little bit, and our dues for NHACC. So that should cover those expenses pretty well. All right. Any other questions about finances? Okay. So New Hampshire Waste Management Council, there is such a thing in New Hampshire, and we happen to have the Conservation Commission representative from the state, our very own Chris Blackstone, who was appointed by the governor. And so I thought, since wastewater is important and interesting, I thought Chris could give us a little update about what that is and what you do.
Thank you. There are several different councils through New Hampshire DES. So there's an Air Quality Council, Waste Management Council, and Water Quality Council. So the Waste Management, and each are made up of a very specific group of constituents, which is a little different than here. Here we all represent Newmarket residents. On those councils, it's all prescribed to be somebody from the legal field, somebody representing a business that creates toxic waste, somebody that's a waste hauler, somebody that is from academia, somebody that's representing conservation commissions, and I am remiss in forgetting the other one. Meeting monthly, third Thursday of the month in the mornings, and I have attended 3 so far, so it's a new appointment for me. It's a 3-year term, and they're looking for a couple of other people still. Oh, I know what it was. New Hampshire Municipal Association has a representative there, and then there's also an elected official representing people that are elected to town governments, be it a planning board, a budget committee, or a town councilman or selectman. I will say that it's really fascinating, similar to how we have these guest speakers come. Every meeting they have a guest speaker come and give some kind of presentation, or the director of the Waste Management Council gives a presentation. And I don't know how much anybody here knows about mattresses in Box Springs. I just didn't know terribly much. I know it's contentious in some towns. Is it $5 fee, $20 fee? How do you get rid of a mattress in Box Springs? But we had a really fascinating seminar talk, and people contributing from the board about they're considered hazardous waste, for instance. How do you get rid of them is a big deal because it's hazardous waste material. So certain towns and municipalities are saying, not even for $10, you can't do that here. It's a different hauler that takes away mattresses in Box Springs. Some states have put regulations saying you're not getting rid of them here at all. Our state is going to pay to take it away somewhere, which also sounds unfortunate, but we're grappling with this right now when we see where's the dirt going from a train wreck in Ohio. So there's a lot of interconnectivity. There are fascinating stories that we heard at that meeting about mattresses. They get thrown in the landfill and dirt's on top of them, and it all looks wonderful until the mattress is rotting away. So there's a soft spot. So workers come to do other things at the landfill and are falling in soft spots in the covered areas. Creating, as you can well imagine, labor board issues and injuries, workplace injuries. There's been cases where trucks backing up to dump things have had a soft spot, and a wheel falls in, axles are broken, and that's a big deal, as you can well imagine, with then that person's out of business for a while and the truck is damaged and whatnot. So beside the hazardous waste, the logistics of getting rid of mattresses are huge. We learned a lot of stories about private companies in Massachusetts, just mom and pop organizations with a couple of acres in their back, taking mattresses, not putting on hazmat suits, taking them all apart, and getting stopped for doing that because OSHA regulations saying it's not safe. You can't do that. So it might be, keep your ears and eyes open. These are stories that you might be hearing coming up. What are towns in New Hampshire doing about managing the disposal of mattresses in Box Springs. And now, after hearing that, every time I hear one of those ads on TV about the Purple mattress or the Casper or the Sativa or whatever it is, I think, okay, if you think that sounds great and you're getting ready for Oldham, where are they going? You might know something, having lived in Vermont, how Vermont was early on in saying mattresses aren't part of our landfill situations. It's really interesting. Yeah, yeah, it's really something to think about. And
you can't sell them or donate them because of a health. So you might have a perfectly good mattress, which we actually happen to have if anybody wants one, but you can't get rid of them.
The source of the contempt, why is it hazmat?
Yeah.
Any one of a number of things, just your own cells sloughing off, bodily fluids, every time you take a nap and breathe when you have flu.
It's not a specific chemical or something.
Oh, I see
Is
what
it
you
like
mean.
formaldehyde,
Oh,
or
it
is
depends
something
on where the mattress came from, when was it built. Those things are all terribly present as well. Yeah.
Did they talk about volume? Like how big a volume is it? Like tens of thousands of?
And I should know that, but I will also tell you, I gave Ellen a little brief overview of my first couple of meetings, and I can tell you, during that one, I felt like a kindergarten kid that had a great day at school, but then when my caregiver said, and did you enjoy the cafeteria? Is it near the library? I would say, I don't know. A nice person just marched me through the building, and I got a new library book. So it was really fascinating, and I took copious notes, but the parts per million and those kind of things, I didn't pay adequate attention to because I was really stuck on a truck backing up and the axle breaking when it falls in the soft earth. Really interesting though. So that was my first meeting. We've also been really involved. Another thing this committee does, council does, is here when there's been a case brought against, let's say, a landfill, and it goes to the court situation, and they didn't like the answer. Either party didn't like the answer or the way it went. It comes back to the council to hear more about and get more fact finding going on. We were supposed to have one of those, but it got postponed, so I haven't attended one of those yet. That would have been in February, but there was a weather event, and so that didn't happen. The last one we had was as fascinating. It involved really understanding the sticky wicket that PFAS and plastics are. So it was very much about plastics in the water, but it was more about how do we detect them. So the minute it's identified, if here is the chain that makes the culprit plastic, so it takes a while. As Steve was talking about, how long did it take to get adequate data to talk about it? Boom. When the companies manufacturing in those forms of plastic are knowing, like, okay, we're ending the 3-year period where the data is being collected, just a simple tweak in the way that stuff is manufactured, then the whole calendar has to start again with analyzing it and seeing what's the matter with it. I can only liken that to knowing some people involved in early seatbelt research, and they got an idea for seatbelts. They went to companies, Ford manufacturers, and Volvo and whatnot, and said, seatbelts will save lives. We have to do something. And the companies all said, yeah, that sounds good, but we need data. So the people then actually go backwards and invent the crash test dummies to be able to get the data to prove that seatbelts were going to save lives. So everybody can agree that PFAS in the water has to be bad, but it's a matter of really pinpointing what is it, how is it, and what are we going to do, and how is it going to be curtailed. So that was that meeting. Other issues come before it, really about landfills opening, sites of landfills, and all the research being done about, and we see it in Conservation Commission when we talk about geopolitical borders and how migrating animals don't know that this is where this town stops and you have to make a detour around that town. You know, we don't have those kind of borders in wildlife management, perhaps nor should they be in landfill sites. It could be, here's a town, and here's the border, but there's hydrology that would be involved saying, even though this thing is on your border, your town is safe because that's not the flow of things in that landfill. So that's a big issue, talking and sharing the research about how deep is hydrology and what kind of engineering is involved in siting landfills, in closing them and capping them and whatnot. So that's the first couple of months of my 3-year journey with that committee.
Yeah.
It sounds like the NPR. That's my brief but spectacular story. Because I will tell you, it's so amazing to sit with people that do those jobs professionally, and then have my hat thinking of all the things through Barbara Richter's group and the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions and the types of things they're interested in, let alone coming right back to Newmarket and thinking, well, yeah, this is something that I think we've talked about before. We had Casella come, a representative from the Southern Tier representing Casella, a year and a half ago maybe. It should probably be time to have that person or his I was going to say stunt double, that sounds bad, his representative come and talk to us a little bit more about real true facts, like where does the garbage go? And we know that Rochester, a lot of ours goes to Rochester. If that's going to be closing in a couple of years, where does it go? You're dutifully cleaning out and rinsing out your ragu spaghetti sauce glass thing, and there's the lid, and there's this, and you take the label off, but where does it all really and truly go based on contracts and the money aspect of it? So we can be very conscientious about animals and caring, but it needs to probably go back to pocketbooks and what does it cost the town. I know Tony Weinstein did a great job with Mr. Fox and composting food compost, but I think we need to have a quicker response time saying, okay, in the next 6 months, where's our stuff going? Where's the garbage going? And how can we be more effective with what goes in the blue bin? And I feel sometimes like if you were to come in and wake me up at 4 a.m. and say, quick, Blackstone, name what goes in the blue bin, I'd think like, well, I have to stop and think because it's not so obvious what goes in the blue bin. And the number of times those blue bins are just left by the side because the wrong stuff is in there is increasing. Or condo associations saying, we're not doing that, we have a private hauler, and everything just goes in a big, the big dumpster bin thing in some condo associations or homeowner associations. So I think we could do a lot to help educate and good, bad, or indifferent, just knowing more helps make better decisions about things or gives stronger convictions either way about things.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Waste disposal is pretty fascinating.
Basically buy less stuff and throw away less stuff and use more duct tape.
Yeah. Yeah.
It turns into prom dresses and wallets and stuff. You've seen it.
It stays there forever.
It stays. That's why it's coming in lovely colors and camouflage. And
Anyway, that's cool. Thank you for that, and it's great you're on that council. I think that's
yeah, thank you. It
gonna
really
bring
is
us
enjoyable.
information back, and I think we have speakers through June, so maybe in July we can have Casella, because I think particularly recycling is, we need to talk about that again. And I know Durham, I'm pretty sure they have a committee, and they looked at which recyclables could make the money, like cardboard and I forget if it was cans or glass, probably cans. And so they started having people in town segregate. Of course, the town does their own waste hauling there, but you know, we should be a little bit more sophisticated in terms of let's recycle stuff that we can make money on or that's actually going to get recycled, and maybe other stuff. Anyway, maybe it'll come back, but I think we could be a little more nimble, is what you were saying too. We should be able to do this. So.
Yeah, the nimble. I just think that word is so effective, Ellen, because it really is. Here's the facts. What do you do? And as a small advisory group, we have the ability to be able to make recommendations. So we can be nimble in what we're learning and what we're recommending.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for that.
Sure.
All right, moving on to committee board reports. Planning board, town planner. Jeff.
We meet next week for this month, and last month we did not have a lot going on.
Yeah, Tuesday is election.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry.
Well, that's
yes. Thank you for the correction. In 2 weeks we meet.
Yeah, it's Sunday,
And
Sunday
so,
savings time.
wait a minute. So it's going to be 2 weeks and an hour, or 2 weeks?
Yes.
Something like that. So in 2 weeks we meet. Last month we didn't. I don't really have anything to report from last month's meeting. That I think would be of much of interest.
Yeah, all right. No, that's all right.
I know
And,
Bart talked extensively about a few things, but I can't speak to exactly what he's up to.
yeah, I think he
And I know some of it had to do with the riverfront. So.
yeah, we'll probably cover that there. Yeah, I think he was going to be on Zoom, but I don't think he's with us. All right, thank you. Let's move on to Riverfront Advisory Committee.
Yes.
Santa Park.
So Riverfront met on February 13th. A couple of you joined us for that, so thanks for coming down. Our next meeting is also technically Monday, this coming Monday, if anyone's interested.
What time?
4 o'clock. 4 o'clock Monday. So last week, or last month, Kyle Pimentel from the Regional Planning Commission and Lisa Wise from UNH Extension came and visited us. Primarily the discussion focused around leaning on them to assist the town with preparing coastal resilience grant for some of the stuff we've been looking at for Shanda Park. More than happy to take them up on that offer. So I think the town will get some assistance out of them. So thank you in advance to those guys. Other than that, we've mostly just been talking about really starting to lay the groundwork and continue outreach for a charrette coming up later this year to kind of talk, at the town level about the riverfront concepts, what people want out of them, how they engage with the waterfront now, how they would like to engage with it later. But something that I keep coming back to in those meetings is, I think for that charrette to be valuable to the town, more people need to be aware of what's being discussed before then. It's really tough to get good input if people are showing up and not really sure what they're ready to discuss. So that's that kind of remains the mission for the next couple months, is just talking about stuff and starting to get ready for that planning part. And then hopefully coming into more the summer this year, applying to some of like the Clean Water SRF programs and some of the harder engineering aspects for Moonlight Brook portions, and seeing if we can get funding for any of that stuff.
Do we have a date for the charrette? Still not?
It's still hanging out there.
Yeah, okay.
I think it was looking at the summer. Now it may be more like fall.
Yeah.
So I don't think anything's been firmed up yet. The town may not formally have been selected for it yet or not too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to speak for Bart, but I think there's heavy interest, but we also may not have formally been chosen yet either.
Yeah. And the coastal resiliency grant, what would we apply? Stratford Regional Planning Commission would help with that. And what would we be applying for? Just to remind us, what would that be? Our living shoreline?
Yeah, that
concepts?
would be more like the living shoreline, less the infrastructure, less like culvert or potential like pedestrian bridge or some of the other grander ideas. It'd be more living shoreline. Is this a functional thing to wrap in to this location? Is that something that provides ecological benefit? Things like that.
So I think they just announced that grant round, and it's pretty soon. It might even be in April. And I know I talked to Bart earlier and Sam about this, but I think they're going to be looking for letters of support from various entities in town for that grant application. So if we think it's a good idea, I know we don't know really the details of the grant, but we've been talking about Shanda Park and living shoreline. I think we're perhaps pretty familiar with that. So it might be helpful to take a vote, if you're willing, to endorse the idea of providing a letter of support to this potential grant application for coastal resiliency, and I can draft that, but it might be needed before our next meeting. So if you would be willing to endorse that, and then Bart and Sam and I could craft a letter to submit with that application. Does that sound like a good plan, Sam?
Yeah, definitely. I think for the timeline that's being discussed, they were looking for that from any committee or group that wanted to support that basically within March. So at this meeting, and it really wouldn't be a whole lot more than just we understand the general aims and goals of this and are aware and generally support the outcome.
Yeah, and I think we have a bigger vision for what we want to do with Moonlight Brook and that, so it's it's not just that one piece. So do you want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to do that on behalf of the Conservation Commission.
All right, do you have a second?
A second.
Second, Tom. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, opposed? I think that was everybody. Thank you for that. Is there anything else for Great.
No, I'll do it.
Yeah, and I think if other people want to attend those meetings, I think that would be great. I think Chris, you and Colin, you were there too, right? So, all right, Town Council, we don't have a rep tonight. Energy and Environment Committee, Julia?
We've been busy. We kind of play two roles writing the master energy plan, which will be sent to the planning board to hopefully be elected as part of our master plan, because Newmarket has said that they want to be energy efficient or energy independent for electricity by 2030, and then entirely independent of fossil fuels by 2050. But there's no plan written for that, so we are writing the master plan update, which is kind of the broad themes and ideas behind it. And then we also are working on, once that's done, we have the energy aggregation plan, which would be kind of how we do the master energy plan. So that's something we're also writing and drafting and working on, exactly like how much solar we want, how much wind, where we're going to get it, and how we'll plan to do that. So it's a really cool time to be entering this committee, because it's on the cusp of some really big stuff for Newmarket, I think, in our energy sources. So we are working with CPC, Community Power of New Hampshire, and that basically, if we become part of the Community Power Plan, we would get to choose whether you would get your power from Eversource or from Newmarket's Community Power, and that could be anywhere. Newmarket would set how much solar they want, how much wind, how much water, hydropower, and then the Community Power would supply that to Newmarket, and yeah. So there's a lot going on that they're working on that commission. We do have a public hearing on March 29th, and I was just going to read the blurb for it. So on March 29th at 7 p.m. at the Newmarket Town Hall, the Energy and Environment Advisory Committee will hold a public hearing on the Newmarket Community Power Electric Aggregation Plan under New Hampshire RSA 53E. New Hampshire municipalities may develop community power plans and programs to become the default efficient electricity providers for the residents and businesses. Newmarket Community Power will create opportunities to lower electricity rates while expanding clean energy options for Newmarket residents. Newmarket is a founding member of the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire, a nonprofit power agency created and governed by New Hampshire cities and towns to operate community power programs. This public hearing is the first of two public hearings that will be held on the Newmarket Community Power Electric Aggregation Plan before it is considered for adoption by the Newmarket Town Council. So we haven't decided a second date, because March 29th was actually our alternative date, but we need to have the Community Power Coalition representative there, and that's the only date he could make. So I will let everyone know when we do have our second date, but I invite you all to come and learn more about community power and be part of the public hearing. Yeah, it's been exciting. Our meetings are basically looking at a screen and editing our plans right now.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for being on that. Any questions for anyone? Heavily focused on the energy side. I mean, that's environment too, but
Yeah.
what's the environment side supposed to be different in terms of?
I think it's just in the way that all of this helps the environment. We haven't really tackled anything specifically, because the Conservation Commission kind of does that side, and I think that they wanted a Conservation Commission member because it makes sense. We're all in the same sustainability boat of helping be more efficient and green. So yeah, we haven't done too much on the environment side. I'm pretty sure they did the composting initiative.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was more.
Are we looking at any solar farms in Newmarket? I thought there was a time
The
when that was.
one that they mentioned, we'd have to maybe do it with Durham, like a field, like maybe go in on it with Durham. But no, we haven't talked about any sites that would be good, but we could always chat with them about what we thought.
No, I was just wondering if.
Yeah,
Okay.
We did look at the landfill back in the day.
Yeah.
We looked at the landfill years ago, but there was a three-phase power issue that doesn't run down Swamp Road. I don't know if it's become more economical. That was like 4 or 5, 6 years ago. I don't know. We had brought revision in and looked at that. So.
I think we were talking a lot about rooftops Kmart, that's another something we've talked about and talked to part about.
Great.
Do we generate any of our own at this point, the town? I mean,
Not that I'm aware of. I don't.
I think Public Works, nobody has solar on top
The
of their.
dam was built so it could be retrofitted for hydropower, so that's something we had talked about. We didn't add it in when the dam was built, but we could add it afterwards. So.
You mean when it was just restored?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, great, thank you. I added Newmarket 300th anniversary steering committee. They have been meeting, and that is in 2027. I think is the right year for that. And they invited us to essentially have a Conservation Commission representative. And I asked Melissa Sharples, she's a longtime resident, I believe, of Newmarket. So she said she would agree to be a rep to that. And that's 3 years out, 4 years out. So I said, go when you can. I don't think you have to go every meeting, but just to see what they're planning and if there's something that we can participate in, what you're thinking about. So,
I know that Melissa and Michael Provost emailed back and forth. He asked me who it was going to be. I said it was her. He didn't know her. I said, hi, Melissa and Michael, until they got hooked up on email.
And I was just going to mention it tonight, and then we can let them know. But I think she's been in contact with them. Melissa has too. So that's that. Okay, so I listed these other things as initiatives. We've talked about them, and we're different people are doing different things related to them. So I just wanted to provide little updates. You remember Pollinator Pathways? We had the speakers from the Kingston Conservation Commission that kind of spearheaded this concept. So we're essentially a partner. There's other communities in New Hampshire that are partnered with them just to promote the concept. And they have a new thing going, calling it the Pollinator Garden Stepping Stone Seed Kits, mini grant opportunities. So if you're one of these partner communities with them, which we are, they are getting, for each community, if we're interested, and Melissa said we were, because Melissa Sharples is also the lead for this. They're going to provide 5 pollinator garden seed kits to each partnering community or conservation commission. And then we can distribute those as we see fit. They'll include instructions and enough native seed to convert a 4-foot by 6-foot patch of lawn to native pollinator habitat. So I think once the opportunity comes, we can talk about, I think some of the suggestions that Melissa had, and I think you had some, Chris, about, maybe it could be on some town lands in town, or maybe there's certain places in town that could help promote the idea so that people would see them, and work with the community garden, the master gardeners, or the, what's it called, Newmarket Garden Club?
Garden Club or Master Gardeners or the Newmarket Community Garden up off the Dame Road.
Yeah, so there's...
And I know one thing came up that just dazzled me. I just didn't know, so pardon me if this is just a fun fact for you, but the median right in front of the town hall where the flag is, and there's 2 nice barrel plantings, doesn't belong to the town. It belongs to the Catholic Church. So it's come up like, oh, it'd be so beautiful if that had wildflowers in the front, or ground covers in the front, or pollinators in the front, but it's not our land to talk about. It would be something that would come from the church, and they maintain it and whatnot. So.
Could be an opportunity, but Melissa's going to take the lead on this, but I just wanted to let you know about that. Sounds great. The other thing related to that, somewhat, is New Hampshire Fish and Game and partners have started a New Hampshire Butterfly Monitoring Network. So I don't know if you do like iNaturalist or any of the apps where you can, record or upload an observation, whether it's a plant or animal or whatever. But they're really focusing on butterflies and trying to get a better handle on the butterfly populations in New Hampshire, because like bees and other things, I'm not sure what their numbers are. Some are declining. So if you Google New Hampshire Fish and Game, New Hampshire Butterfly Monitoring Network, you'll find the information on their website, and you can. They're having trainings about how to identify some of the main butterflies that we see. I think we have like 130 species in New Hampshire, and you can upload your own observations. They really want citizen scientists, all of us, to see them, take a picture, and upload the information. So just another opportunity to get involved. And they're beautiful. All right, Connect to Protect. Remember, this is the initiative that we have signed on to and getting some technical assistance from the Great Bay Estuarine Research Reserve and Extension, or some of the partners in Fish and Game. And I've asked Tom to kind of take the lead, and Bart and he and I have met a little bit. So do you want to just
Yeah,
give an
well,
update?
we, Ellen and Bart and I met with the Great Bay folks, National Estuarine Research Reserve, and Emma Tutine, and to talk about some opportunities that and what they're looking for and their focus with the Connect to Protect initiative. And they basically they're interested in a number of things. They're looking to do some more land conservation work in the area. They're interested mostly in wetland migration corridors, where as sea level rises, the wetlands will be able to continue to move inland. They're also very interested in trail corridors, trying to connect as many trails as possible to get like very large, what do they call them, commuter trail corridors and things like that. And so they were asking us how the town prioritizes properties and targets properties, and and did we, and what sorts of things do we look at? And so what we're trying to do now is get that done, to figure out exactly what sorts of maps and targeting that we want to do. So Bart and Ellen and I met on the 2nd of March with Southeastern Land Trust with Dwayne Hyde to look at their prioritization stuff. They look at tools that they use in targeting, and also to talk about funding sources. And Dwayne was incredibly helpful and gave us a lot to think about. And so next, what we're doing is just trying to come up with the maps and the resources that we look at for targeting. And the Connect to Protect folks are also able to provide some GIS services to help produce maps so that we're able to help better prioritize and target land, so we could take advantage of some of these funding opportunities to do some more conservation work. That's about it. I'm just now kind of learning who everybody is down here. So if you have any questions, Ellen will be glad to answer.
That's how you get it. This is great because Tom's got a lot of experience, but I think we're still gathering information. There's sort of this new impetus, as Tom said, to do some new land conservation, potentially some new funding sources coming down from the feds, maybe through the state. And as you know, we've been a great partner with Southeast Land Trust, so we want to, collaborate and what they're working on, what's the Estuarine Reserve working on, and see where our priorities. And we know we're interested in, connectivity for nature and for people. So we just have all these ideas still swirling a little bit and trying to sort it out. So that's kind of what we're doing. And I think when we get to a point where, we want to start having a conversation, we can bring those resources to the commission and start looking at maps and making people out there aware if they're interested, because obviously this is still landowner interest and what people are interested in doing in terms of additional conserving of lands or water. We want to protect our drinking water. And there's a lot of potentially interesting resources, as Tom said, so it's a good opportunity to sort of, rethink about this, which we haven't done for a few years after we have these blips of land conservation. So some pretty exciting opportunities.
It's pretty neat. Yeah, it's fun.
So we'll keep you posted, and So thank you, Tom. And then the third one, as we talked about last couple of meetings, is the stream and wildlife crossing. We just called it a stream and wildlife crossing enhancement project. So thinking about culverts and stream crossings, and because Colin has such great experience with this, I asked if he would sort of take a lead on that.
Tag, you're it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm diving in. So I actually have a meeting with some of my previous staff tomorrow to look at some of that data that is currently on the DES website that has all the infrastructure data. So somebody has come through the town and assessed all of the culverts, not the complete assessment, but have assessed it. So there's pictures of all the infrastructure online. So we were going to just take a look at it from TU's perspective. You know, that we don't really have cold water streams here. So we actually had a $3 million grant with SELT and the Forest Society to do some combined conservation work around the state. And maybe Dwayne was talking a little bit about that when you guys met with him, but there is some funding out there if we can come up with some good reconnection projects, and if those reconnection projects have some sort of wildlife component to it as well, there could be funding for land conservation as well as wildlife protection. So we're just at the initial stages, taking a look at it, looking at potential funding that's out there, and see what we can come up with. But then the real challenge is putting together a package that we would then put forth to get funding for. And then, of course, landowner permission, and, you know, if we can connect towns, we can connect private entities. There's different pots of money for different entities. And, you know, it was interesting listening to the Rockingham Planning Commission at the meeting, what was that, a few weeks ago, Sam? You know, I think they would be very interested as well. You know, and I'm curious, I know they have to get funding for some of their staff, so I think they're kind of looking for projects to get involved with, and if it makes sense that collaborating with them is the way to go because they have access to some of that funding, I think it's a great idea.
You know, and I'm not sure, you know, the Connect to Protect maps, I think I've shared that website, but you can go and look at Newmarket, and the maps are a little confusing, but essentially they show for each town in the state, or in the coastal watershed, the connectivity where, for nature, you know, it's focused on nature in those maps. And, you know, a lot of connectivity is going to be along waterways and wetland systems. So it'd be interesting to know how, you know, the data that you're talking about from the culvert studies, if you overlaid that on the Connect to Protect and those stream crossings, if there are any that are in those high priority areas in the Connect to Protect, what the data shows for the culvert. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because then that funding opportunity would be really, that would be a hot spot for potential funding.
Yeah. Good idea.
We should see if we can figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
That might be something we have potential, as Tom said, GIS assistance. So we might see if he could do that.
Okay.
Who was the GIS assistant from?
Pete Steckler is.
Pete at TNC.
Yeah, he's an independent now, but he's
really?
got a contract with the Connect to Protect to provide some technical assistance. So
great.
We're still figuring out what that might entail for us. But that might be a really useful thing to overlay.
Yeah, if you were going to have a conversation with Pete, let me know.
Okay.
And I'd love to hop on that as well.
Great.
Cool. All right.
Just make a note. And I think it goes without saying we obviously are partnering or want to with DPW and Lindsay, our town engineer, because they're the infrastructure people. So a lot of great connections in town. Conservation easement monitoring. I think you and Melissa are working on the report.
Yes, I received it from her a couple of days ago, and I didn't have time last night to add my portion, add some photos. So I'll get to that this weekend, get it back to Melissa for final touch-up, and then
sounds good.
Pass it on.
Yeah, great. Thank you. The only other thing I had that is the Hilton conservation easement. We're going to wait till spring. We're going to look at a couple missing monuments, but I think we'll wait, obviously, till the weather's better.
Okay.
And Jeff, you're going to help with that?
Yep.
And
how many do
There's
we
something
have
wrong.
in
how many
town,
easements?
that we would monitor?
I think we monitor 7 or 8 at this point.
Decent amount.
Yeah, and they're all sort of different. Some are private land, some are conservation ownerships, some are one we own. Yeah, they're all a little bit different. So the Hilton Conservation Easement, which is private ownership, it's a tree farm, and they are doing an active timber harvest. It just started last week. So it's just a FYI, they're allowed to do that as part of the easement, and they have a management plan with Charlie Marino, with their forester. So just wanted to let you know that was underway. Okay, land stewardship. Sliding Rock Recreation and Conservation Area, we have the LRAC grant. I haven't really done anything on it since. I got to get working on that because I'm going to help write the content for the kiosk. And we can't do too much else until the weather gets better. Wigan Farm, recall last time we talked about the bridge boardwalk needs to be extended, and Sam has worked on a budget for the materials we need. And I think you came up with $1,100. So we want to approve that money tonight so that we can do that project this spring, and we'll do that in a second. But I'm thinking of April 22nd is Earth Day, and that would be a nice time. Probably we could do the boardwalk. Depends on weather. But we have other things we want to do at Wigan Farm, and some invasive work and some other signpost stuff. So if we had a nice work day, some people could work on the boardwalk, some people could do other things. So I just wanted to see what if you had, April 22nd looked okay or a conflict. Obviously everybody may or may not be able to come. That's totally fine. But just wanted to see if people thought that might be a good day for a work day at Wigan Farm to do some of this work.
So not the 15th.
Not the 15th. I'm going to push up. One of our volunteers, Vic, who worked with Sam, is not available the 15th, and
Yep.
so I thought, well, he'd be a good person to help build that bridge. So I was looking at the 22nd instead.
I have work, but
Yeah,
What day of
Was
the
it a
week
weekend?
is
it's a
that?
Saturday. Yeah,
Sounds good.
yeah, and we'll post it on Nature Groupie, so we can usually get UNH students and other people from town. We've had pretty good luck getting their volunteers to come, so just put it out there.
That's great to put out announcements and say Conservation Commission doing something on Earth Day.
Yeah,
That's
I
really
think that,
nice,
yeah.
tidy.
Kind of nice.
Good
And I
PR.
think an extra week, given the weather, who knows what this, we got snow, and we're going to have it for a while, so.
So Sam, is that something you would send something out, what you need equipment-wise and that sort of thing? Like who's taking
Yeah, or
the
I
lead?
could work with Sam on that. I do a lot of volunteer work days, so I
Yeah.
can help Sam with that. Yeah, we'd post it,
That'd
yeah.
probably be smarter. I'm just
I know
guessing.
you're busy. Yeah.
So is that something, chainsaws and?
No, it's probably
looking
just
for?
drills and hammers, drills and hammers. Maybe one saw, usually we just use if somebody has a cordless.
Yep.
Yeah, we usually have enough tools.
Yeah, the majority of it, there's some spot repair to the existing bridge, but the majority of it is we're going to add, I think, around 55 feet of kind of walkway to the bridge, about 15 feet on the parking lot side, and about 40 feet on the other side. Anyone who's been there in the spring knows it turns into a mud bog. So most of it's walkway extension.
And even though it's muddy, I did check the wetlands permitting, and the way they do it now is if you're just extending a boardwalk and it's not in wetland per se, then you don't need a permit. So it's just muddy because we walked on it so much. So we do not need a permit for that, as I read the wetlands rules now. If we were going to redo the bridge, we would, but just to do boardwalk, we don't. Yes, so we need a motion to approve $1,100 for the materials for the Wigan Farm Bridge.
I would make a motion to approve that expenditure of $1,100 based on the bridge repairs. for
Thank you.
Wigan Farm.
And could you just say from the Conservation Fund?
From the Conservation Fund,
Thank you. Do we have a second?
not from the chair.
Thank you, Juliana. Any discussion?
Ellen's phones.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It goes unanimous. Thank you. Thanks, Sam, for putting that together.
Yeah. I tried.
So the kiosk, we haven't really figured out the kiosk. I was thinking it's sort of sad. It's lying there in the snow. And I know Rick's crew is really busy, and so I was thinking we should probably go out there and try to dismantle pieces that might. We can't salvage the posts, right? I think they snapped off.
Yeah,
and
the,
so
the
Yeah,
posts
the
are
posts.
rotted.
so we basically just need to sever. So I might, if it's okay with you, I might go out there this weekend. My husband, we can go out. We live right like stone's throw, so start seeing if we can take it apart, and then maybe DPW can take the heavy piece somewhere. But it's, yeah, we should probably deal with it. It's just
You can throw it in the back of my truck with my old mattresses and
there
boxes.
you go.
We'll take them down.
Drive down the road and
Stop somewhere.
yeah. Stop somewhere along the way.
Yeah, chuck them
Get
out
to a
somewhere.
Stookies with pecan rolls.
All right, so we'll look at that. And the last thing I had is you're called the Dearborn. We're working on the driveway right-of-way easement, and we finally have a draft, and it's with the town attorney. And Tom and I met with the abutter, and she hasn't seen this draft yet, but she's well aware of the situation and seems very amenable. So we'll share it with her once the town's looked at it, and then it will go back to Fish and Game because they have to approve it too. So let's move it along. So we should get that settled in the next month or two. Pretty good. And that's all I had for stewardship. Anybody else have any stewardship questions, issues? All right. So we can have a motion to adjourn if we want to adjourn.
Can I mention one other thing?
Yeah.
I don't want to speak at length about it.
Yeah.
And, not that. I've been following it loosely, but just if folks aren't aware, moving through the state legislature right now, they're trying to do away with the licensure of certified wetland scientists, certified soil scientists, and foresters. And just, if you want to contact anyone to try to get them to not do away with those licensures, it would be my opinion anyway, that they are, they do help protect the environment and our society in general. They do perform a worthwhile function. And a lot of our town regulations turn back to these professionals. And I don't know how that will impact wetland permitting. If there's no certified wetland or soil scientist to mark, wetlands, you just defer to anyone that considers himself a professional. Do we change our regulations to require schooling? Like, I don't even know how things move forward after something like that may happen. So I know at one time they didn't, there weren't licensed professionals in those fields. And I think we see things like Leda Lane, like there's a subdivision that's in wetland, and they just fill in as people bought lots and built stuff. So it's in the House currently. There is a hearing Monday at 2, a public hearing where people can speak. And I'm a professional land surveyor, in the New Hampshire Land Surveyors Association. Is going to support opposition to House Bill 2 that they're going to discuss. Next
Surveyors
week.
aren't in the list, though, right?
Surveyors are not in the list, but they are trying to combine the board with engineers and limit the number of people on it. So, which is, I don't know if you guys want to hear about that either, but they're trying to limit the board to just 5 members, one person being a lay person, 2 surveyors and 2 engineers. So it's possible that, a chemical engineer, for example, could be like up for some sort of negligence, and a voting person, like a land surveyor like me, who knows nothing about chemical engineering, may decide the fate of that person's license. Or someone who knows nothing about the legal aspects of land surveying, they know a ton about chemical engineering, deciding whether or not I was negligent. And they're also trying to make reciprocity between states for licensure very very easy, almost by virtue of holding a license in another state. They will hand you a license to practice in New Hampshire. So that's kind of one of the
Right,
things
even
we're
though
trying to
rules are different in different states.
do. Yeah, the laws, the legal aspects of land surveying that make a land surveyor required. The laws are different in every state.
Yeah.
The needs.
And the
Another
needs, yeah.
reason to not be combined with engineers, because I would fully support that for engineering.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of states do have combined survey engineer boards, but they comprise of 10 members, so you have the ability to have a lot of surveyors, and they have requirements for people holding both licenses to be on board.
Oh, just more dialogue, a chance to talk with the group.
And I'm sorry, what is the purpose of
Oh, I think
this
they're well.
effort?
Don't know what it is ultimately, but their justification was that there are professional organizations, national professional organizations have certifications. But again, we're a nation of states, right? And we have state laws, and so the national certification would not know, right, what
Well,
individual states.
a lot of my understanding is that a lot of the reasoning that states want to move away and are across the country, there's a movement to do away with a lot of certifications, whether it be barber shops or whatever. As it's seen as a barrier to entry into the profession, and it's seen as an economic, I don't know, bottleneck, I guess. So they're trying to make it easier for people. But one thing that I like to point out is there is not a line of people that cannot become licensed land surveyors, or are there thousands of soil scientists, wannabe folks out there that just can't do it because those regulations are stopping them. And no one says yes. That's
what is the problem?
What is this really a hindrance to economic development? But if you want to write to a representative or something, that would be. I think it's worthy.
Yeah, I think if you go also to the NHACC website, because they're lobbyists for conservation commissions, they're following these, and they'll explain it on there as well.
Yes, landscape architects licenses as well.
Yeah.
I don't know a ton about that profession. I do work with licensed landscape architects and know folks that are, but I don't know a lot of the history and exactly what they're up to. And there are towns that would still also require licensed landscape architects to stamp landscape plans. So,
all the issues going on with erosion control and rain gardens and parking lots and whatever, that falls on landscape architects too. So there's a direct connection to conservation and ecology.
Well, if you look at conservation easement deeds, most of them refer somewhere in there about professional foresters or wildlife biologists. We're not by the state, but
professional foresters
So
are numerous instances for tree farms, right? You have to have a forestry management plan.
yeah.
It was supposed to save us money as well, because you don't have administrative assistants working in Concord and offices and convening meetings and sending out minutes and keeping documents and clerks and pages and whatnot, taking care of all these licenses and notifications and filing system. I'm just saying that that's what was also stated in the budget.
Definitely, without a doubt.
But the
some of the
returns are tenfold on the money it costs.
All right. Well, thank
The
you.
professionals won't go away. The people that do the work won't go away, so they'll
You
still
hope
be
not.
there. But how does a town decide, can I go flag my own wetlands? Who's going to stop me? Can the town create a regulation that will stop me from doing it myself? Or hanging, at what point? And how does a state lean on, you've impacted a wetland? Well, prove it, and who proves it? Someone went to
Competing.
college,
Yeah.
Okay, you went to college, but you
Or
never,
not.
or,
Mhm.
So,
All right. Thank you for bringing it up. Anything else? That was a big one. All right. Let's. Do we start a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Second. All in favor? Aye.
aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.